Welcome to the Geek Homeworld. I am your host, Ed, aka SavageTechman. We talk sci-fi, TV, movies, superheroes, and all from a geek perspective. You can find us on Blogger, Google+, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We're everywhere. Join the Geek Homeworld. So welcome to another episode of the Geek Homeworld. We're talking about the Game of Thrones series finale, and gonna be interacting with anybody if anybody shows up for this. This is totally unannounced broadcast, but getting set up in the new studio, so it's a mess. You don't want to see it, and I am really playing with my lighting here. It's really off. I do not have my 3-point lighting going, so I don't know if I look sinister with the shadows here or not. I'm not trying to. And if you're listening to the audio podcast of this, it doesn't make sense anyway. So, so we're talking about Game of Thrones, and there has been just a lot of backlash for season 8 for this final season. And I'm going to be controversial in the sense that I think it was great. Have I read the books? No. I don't know the original source material that well, but I get some of the frustration. Of course, the latest is there's over 1 million people that have done, signed on to, I guess it were, a petition to have new writers and redo the entire season. This kind of smells of some of the situations around The Last Jedi. So I hate to see the Game of Thrones fandom fall into disarray, but this was a series finale. Of course, we'll have this spinoff series that'll be like 1,000 years or whatever before the throne and stuff like that. But this was truly epic television. And I was talking with a friend recently. Even when Game of Thrones is bad, it's kind of like Star Wars used to be. Even when it's bad, it's good. It's like pizza, you know. But my impressions of the entire season have been good. And in fact, the defeat of the Night King felt very rushed. We went through the darkness of no one could see what was going on in the battle, and I understand that. But I don't feel like it messed in any way with the continuity of anything. I mean, I don't think it took away from the episode. Yeah, it was a little bit dark. And then, of course, we had the mystery coffee cup that was appearing in the episode there, in the next episode. And then, of course, we had Jon Snow not petting the dog there, which, spoilers, by the way, this will be spoil-filled. So if you haven't seen Game of Thrones, the finale, I guess I should have said that right out front there, but don't listen to this episode of the podcast or watch this video if you have not seen the series finale of Game of Thrones. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but everything pretty much here is going to be spoilers. It's just my opinion on things, and I think it's some of the best television we've ever seen. Will it go down as the best television series ever? Possibly. Until this season, there really wasn't that much discontent with the direction of Game of Thrones. There probably was a little bit, but it never reached a level that it reached these last several episodes. And depending on who you wanted to sit on the Iron Throne, which, spoiler alert, there is no Iron Throne, they definitely broke the wheel in this episode of Game of Thrones. And it was not at all who I thought would be sitting on the throne, or since the throne is no more. And there were so many twists and turns. And when we had the Night King episode, that was epic television, even though we couldn't see it too well. But we've recently been rewatching a lot of the series. I think we're up to the 3rd season, and pretty much when you get around there, you see the arc of Daenerys, and you see kind of where it's going to go. And for people that were surprised, I get what they're saying, but I don't personally feel like you should be totally surprised that Dany burned, I almost said Knots Landing. Some of you won't even get that reference, but King's Landing burned it all to the ground. And she was graphic about it, the men, women, and children, when she had her battle cry with the Unsullied, and it was pretty epic, this episode. And I like the fact that Tyrion made it to the end, and he's the Hand of the King, which he did not want. But I don't know anybody that thought that Bran Stark would end up being the one on the throne that doesn't exist anymore, but of the countries of Westeros. What was interesting is, instead of the 7 countries or whatever, or camps or whatever you want to call it, well, countries, I guess they would be, of Westeros, the North is basically gone back to being an independent state under the watchful eye of Sansa Stark. So she was crowned in the series finale as the queen of the North, basically. Jon, had he followed some of his, Jon Snow, had he followed, or Jon Targaryen, whatever, had he followed some of the advice and not really followed Daenerys to the way that he did, to the extent he did, there could have been a chance that he could have averted a lot of this death and destruction, but he just didn't seem, I was like, I get your loyalty to Dany, and after finding out she was your aunt, that just made things really weird for him. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're a Lannister, apparently, you know, with Cersei and Jaime dying together there, you know, and their extracurricular activities. But Jon Snow, essentially, or Jon Targaryen, he could have stopped Dany, but could he have stopped her? I don't know. I'm not really sure, because she was just so strong-willed, and I felt like she was going to do what she was going to do. So it was not like that there was much I think he could do. He just, when Dany destroyed the men, women, and children, and, you know, Dracarys, basically, and burned everything to a cinder. I mean, every person, quite literally. There might have been a few that survived, but very few. Certainly not unscathed, but it was pretty brutal. And she had that choice in that moment from last week's episode when she could have said, okay, you know, they rang the bells. You know, I could understand her even going and taking out Cersei. She, in her mind, had every right, or she thought she was right, and she gave into that darkness. It's kind of like Anakin Skywalker. It reminded me, especially the series finale, reminded me of Anakin Skywalker. It reminded me of Anakin taking that step and becoming Darth Vader, essentially, by he even killed younglings. And, well, there you go. Daenerys Targaryen, she's going to be known for that. And so pivotal when Jon went up there and he killed her, and then, you know, the Unsullied leader there, he wanted his head, and much more, you know, because he should have died for what he did. And I just think it was just very tragic. It was extremely tragic. And there have been so many. I'm clicking through and looking at a list of the characters for Game of Thrones. And I don't think anybody, no matter if they trolls go out there or whatever and they, vote the series down and, it doesn't matter. I think at this point it's all said and done. And we did get a little fan service there where John was petting the direwolf there that he didn't in the previous episode or the episode before that. And so there was a little bit of fan service there, but it was so epic, and I've really got to watch that finale. I'll probably watch it again. And I didn't think, somehow part of me knew that Bran would be around, but I didn't think that he would end up kind of being the king. And they made specific, and this is all spoilers of course, but they made specific, Tyrion pretty much laid this out and everyone said aye and eventually agreed with it. And so Tyrion was talking about Bran, and he says that, Bran's not going to have kids, so he's going to be the first and last of his name. So basically that leaves it up to the people. And it's so funny when Samwell was trying to say, well, shouldn't everybody, basically like a democracy, shouldn't everyone vote on who's going to be the leader? And you pretty much had this council of 7 states, now essentially 6, because Sansa gets the north. The north is basically free, and she's their queen. She's kind of watching over them, but and then I kind of like, after everything is said and done, you've got Tyrion and a few others there, and sitting there, and they're trying to decide, the council, when Bran comes in, and they're deciding who's gonna be giving out the guy who's the coin. What we had, was it it's hard to keep the name straight, but Gerard Mormont was there, I believe. And then I'm getting the names all messed up. But anywho, so you had the gentleman sitting around, and he's like, well, the Lord of Coing allow us to build ships, will allow us to do this. And we're talking about brothels and everything. And then you had Brienne, basically talking, Brienne of Tarth, Sir Brienne the Knight, which so richly deserved. And you see that she basically was, she's like, well, I don't think brothels are that important. And it's just so funny, just the interactions and all that. But I liked it. I thought it was a good into the series. Now, Grey Worm was the one I was referring to earlier. He's basically Sansa, not Cersei. Grey Worm was basically made the Lord of War, and by Daenerys, and from there, it just things. It was just so epic. It's hard to really even find the words to kind of say what I feel about the episode, and it just, I don't know. It was just very epic episode. I don't fall in line with the people that say this was a terrible episode and it did this an injustice, as it were, to the characters. I don't think so as much. I do feel, though, I wish John would have spoke up sooner. John would have, asserted himself more, but I think he realized if he did, there was really no stopping Dani. She was almost like a force of nature. And when you see a lot of the characters, when you get towards the end of the series, you're seeing them all dressed in black, and it's kind of, dark, and so that was kind of the feel that we had. And that's also, brilliant costuming, by the way, that they did. They really should win some awards for some of the stuff that they've done in Game of Thrones, and especially this season. I didn't know that after defeating the Night King, that in the episode where Arya did that, Arya Stark, and so great to see a lot of these characters from season 1 until now, especially Arya, to see her, how she's grown, and in the end, how she ends up, she's heading west, so she's basically going to be the Stark that explores what's beyond the edge of the world, essentially. And I would love to see a future, and I don't know if it was an intentional thing put in there or just, words said, but it seemed like when Tyrion Lannister was telling Jon Snow, I'll see you in 10 years, does that mean in 10 years that we're getting someone who's going to be, the next king? So, or whatever, but just my thoughts about it. It was very interesting to see the transition, and it was so dark. The episode was dark, but I think it kind of had to be, there was so much that could have been said, could have been done differently. I'm happy with how it turned out. I don't feel bad about how the series turned out. I can't hate on the show because it's such quality in the acting and even the writing, directing, everything. It's just kind of heavy, and it's it was just really awesome. They made these shows, these episodes, basically like films, and I didn't mind them going longer than an hour. They could have went 2 hours, and I would have been fine with it. So it was just really good to see that. So anywho, I was hoping to get some comments. It's actually, I started recording, I guess this is like May 19th. I was trying to get a decent setup here, but I'm still working on that and my lighting's a little bit off. Ooh, look at the shadows. There's a hand over my head there. So yeah, my lighting is all off here. So, apologies for that. But it will get better. And, but Game of Thrones, it's going to be weird not having it around. I remember when Sopranos ended, and another great HBO series, and so I'm looking for the next one. Watchmen, I hope, will be good. I know it's going to be different. It's it's not going to be the same. We may never get a show for a long time that's as good and as solid and really subverted expectations as much as Game of Thrones has. And that's why it has a loyal following. And it'll continue to have a loyal following. I know there's at least 1 million people out there that sign that petition that say, hey, this is not what they wanted, And some people think Cersei deserved to suffer a little bit more than she did. And Jamie was able to get back to her. Jamie, her brother, And this show has some heavy stuff they deal with. This series, Game of Thrones, and if you're not a fan of it, you probably wouldn't understand, or get it. But it essentially it deals with just some heavy stuff. So, and they're not afraid to show a lot of the violence and all that. It's pretty much in your face there. And HBO's done a great job, and everyone involved with the show has done a wonderful job. So, it's interesting. I'm waiting for whatever comes next in the Game of Thrones universe. I was expecting when Dany was in talking to those legions of people, it reminded me a bit of Force Awakens. It reminded me of Senator Palpatine and overseeing the Clone Wars in Episode 2 of Star Wars, Attack of the Clones. It reminded me of him giving that order, and is very much felt very much like a Star Wars film in a way, and the turn to the dark side of Daenerys. And in her mind, she was right, just like Anakin in Episode 3 when he became Vader. He essentially says, the Jedi are corrupt, and then Obi-Wan says, well, you are lost then. And I think Dany got lost in her rage, and she basically was going to burn the world down. Her intentions were to, burn it to ash and cinder, every man, woman, and child. And when Jon was there, he says, you are my queen, and all that. And I was like, oh, come on, Jon. I was like, and I thought he was going to stab her, and yes, well, he did. So, I thought that dragon was going to take him out, but him being a Targaryen, Dragon did not. And then him flying off, burning the throne to just melting it. I mean, out of pure rage and anger, and not turning on Jon, surprisingly, because I thought that could happen. But he basically flew off to the east with Dany. Excuse me. And it was pretty epic. And so at the end of the series, we basically have Tyrion being handed the king, who is Bram the Broken, I think is what they call him. And first of his name, last of his name, essentially. So what happens afterwards, I don't know. The people of the North are being ruled over by Sansa Stark, and that was kind of cool to see. Lovely costuming they did there. I mean, fantastic, and just amazing. I really don't know much more what I can say about Game of Thrones, and that hasn't been said or is already going to be said. I do understand the people that didn't like their camp of, who they thought was going to get it, if they were Team Dany or they were Team Cersei. I think Cersei she should have fought back more instead of drinking wine and just getting, entombed in her own castle there, the Red Keep and all that. But intense writing, everything was great. Well, not everything was great, but all in all, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was riveting television. The last 3 episodes, the series finale was just, it felt like, wow, you're at the end of the world, essentially, is what I was thinking while I was watching it. And so, what do? Do you have a king and they couldn't decide, at first, and Tyrion was being the wise kind of leader as he's shackled in chains, and he picks Bran, and that made sense, and Jon being exiled to the north, back to the Wall, ironically, He'll be fine, but it sucks for John. He was such a pivotal character in the show, and you would think that they would do a better fan service to him, but you can't be like Avengers Endgame and do all they did to service the character. I mean, every character. It gets very difficult when you have to deal with all the different characters. So to get it right isn't always the easiest way. It's not always the best outcome that you want, but you do the best you can. I haven't really podcasted for almost a month. So, of course, Avengers Endgame came out, and right now, as of this weekend, coming out the weekend, looking at the numbers, if I can pull them up here, looks like it's going to be dethroned by John Wick 3, basically, Chapter 3, Parabellum. The weekend estimates are bringing in about 57 million. I saw one of my friends online that saw it and said it was one of the best action movies they've seen. I intend to see it probably this week. If everything goes well, that would be nice. But we're looking at possibly about 29.5 million for Avengers Endgame this weekend. So John Wick's going to take it out. And that means this is the fourth weekend of that. So basically it's been out a month. We had April 26th through 28th. It did the record-shattering 357 million opening, Endgame did. Then its second weekend dropped about 59% almost, which is typical of films like that. They're usually front-loaded, but this one does have some legs on it, and it picked up about 147 million, which put it around 621 through its second week. Third week, May 10th to 12th, it dropped almost 58% to 63 million, and that's not changing the amount of theaters. Now, it had like 4662, so 4,600 basically theaters, and they dropped it down to about 4,200. So it lost about 400 or so theaters this weekend, and it dropped from 63 million May 10th to 12th to this May 17th to 19th. Its box office around 29 million roughly, almost 29 and a half. And that's estimated. That may change when the numbers come out tomorrow, or actually today, which is Monday, May 20th, 2019. So we're looking at possibly some bigger numbers. Maybe, or I wouldn't say necessarily bigger numbers, but they may be adjusted up, maybe adjusted down. But most of the life is been done with this movie. And there's a lot of good stuff. And John Wick 3, which I understand is spectacular, is gonna be the box office champion. So Avengers Endgame did 3 weeks. That's pretty damn awesome, because almost $771 million, and for a 3-hour movie. So that whole thing about, can it get as many plays in there? Well, the thing is, theaters can handle it. They just decide to show less of other films. But it was an incredible 3-hour event. Now, I will admit, I went that opening night, that Thursday. I think they had a preview. And there's nothing like, and if you've been to a Star Wars premiere or any premiere when the true rabid fans come out to see it, there's nothing like it. They were cheering and screaming and hollering. And then, I saw it a total of 4 times. I wanted to catch it in IMAX 3D, but I think I've kind of missed the boat on that. So I'll only have seen it 4 times in the theater, and I think at least one of those was in 3D. And so it was great. 3D helped a little bit, but still, it would have been awesome to see in an IMAX, and maybe I'll get a chance, but I don't know. But 770 million, almost 771 roughly, domestic is pretty doggone important. 1.8 billion, which is like 70% of the whole total there. And you add those together, domestic and foreign, and you get a worldwide of 2,614,805,870 roughly. So all time, where does that put it? Well, this weekend, worldwide, it's got about, we're looking at 2,614, so 2,614 worldwide. Avatar is number one with 2.788, so 2,788,000,000. And can it do it? Well, here's the good news. If you're an Avengers Endgame fan, with that box office, if that holds, it is at 770 million domestic. So Avatar was at the number one domestic film in the U.S. of all time at 760 million. So right now it's 10 million ahead. So Avengers Endgame in its fourth week, even though it falls to number 2 at the box office, it has the number 1 domestic film of all time. So congratulations to Avengers Endgame, to Marvel, the world building. You did over 22, 23 films. Spectacular. Are there things wrong with Endgame? Yes. And it's not a perfect movie. Is it going to win an Oscar for everything? I don't know. I don't know if did I thoroughly enjoy it? Yes, I did. Was it everything I hoped for? Yes, it was that and more. But, it's weird after like Age of Ultron, which seems not as big as being like the second Avengers. And then, of course, Infinity War in some ways was more of a more tight storyline. And it was really the Thanos storyline and Avengers trying to stop them, and then they just couldn't. And it's incredible, and I could watch that over and over again. Endgame, I could do that too. I mean, they both complement each other. But some of the most awesome battles, like that battle scene, I don't think we'll ever see anything as close to a comic book, straight out of the comics as we saw in Endgame, where in Captain America using Mjolnir and wielding that, and Stormbreaker, and even what's called, quote unquote, the fat version of Thor. He still was pretty badass with Stormbreaker, and even without, he was still kicking butt. And he went for the head this time early on in the film, and the whole time travel element through the quantum realm, and time travel being explained totally different than any other film, and they even called out it pretty much every film. So that, a little self-aware this film was, I guess you would say, on time travel, but it said this is how time travel is going to work in the Marvel Universe versus what you've seen in other adaptations, other film franchise. So that magic, that whatever, the time travel, it all seemed to work. So Avengers Endgame is definitely one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's just on a cinematic level, it was just so good. Is it going to be the best movie of the year? I don't know. Right now, I can't say, and because there's still Star Wars Episode 9 or The Rise of Skywalker, and I really am trusting J.J. Abrams to bring that back into the fold and make Star Wars better, to kind of correct what Ryan Johnson kind of did. If he has to retcon some stuff, I'm fine with that. But I think, yeah, Luke Skywalker's gone, and that's when that death was final, and I think they're just gonna, explain to me, having the Emperor back and maybe his essence becoming part of Snoke, and Snoke just being a vessel and then bringing him back. That's a big risk to do this, and I hope audiences take to it, and I hope it all makes sense. But I hope that they do the kind of fan service. I mean, you gotta think, talking about fan service, that Avengers Endgame was heavy on the fan service, even at to the extent where it may have messed up somewhat some of the timeline a little bit and everything. Captain America getting that life he always wanted, that Tony told him he needed to get with Peggy, and that was so awesome. There's so many awesome moments, and a lot of things paid off and in Endgame. But when we're talking about Star Wars, there's a lot that needs to be done to fix kind of what Ryan Johnson did and what he kind of messed up. So I'm really hoping that J.J. Abrams is able to be up to the task, and I hope that he's able to, bring a close to the Skywalker saga that's as old as I am. I'm a little bit older than that, but, basically majority of my life, I've been a Star Wars fan, and I'm going to be a Star Wars fan. And looking back, Solo wasn't as bad probably as I thought it was, but coming off The Last Jedi and seeing that, which stylistically, I think it was a beautiful film. I get where he was going with some of the stuff, but I just didn't care for that, Luke Skywalker. We just needed to see him in the flesh, just, out there wielding his lightsaber, not just force projecting. But, I trust J.J. Abrams is going to probably be the best person, because he did consult with George Lucas about how to approach Luke in the film and where, how it should go, how Luke should be treated, his character. And with that being said, I just think that was smart. I really do. I think that I have high hopes that episode 9 will, in the trilogy, or actually 6 movies that started with the prequels, and I hope it seems like it's bringing stuff in from the prequels too. So yes, they're doing a lot of fan service there, but they need to do, I wish they could do the kind of fan service that Marvel did with Avengers Endgame, but Marvel didn't. They've done everything right for so long, and yes, you can pick the films apart and all that, but Star Wars has, since Lucas kind of let it go, is gone a different way. I mean, Force Awakens was great, and had Carrie Fisher not passed away, that did, of course, mess with the whole outline of things. Maybe Luke Skywalker, even then we may still be complaining about Luke Skywalker's death in The Last Jedi, and him saying it's time for the Jedi to end, which Mark Hamill said, this is not Luke Skywalker. Ryan Johnson, I know it's your film, but I don't get this, and the fans are not going to like this. But yes, I'm an actor, and so I have to play the part that I've been asked to play. So that being said, though, there's a lot of territory with episode 9 that, with the rise of Skywalker, is Skywalker now a new religion versus the Jedi versus the Sith, and is Rey The Rise of Skywalker is Luke being brought back from the dead, maybe by Palpatine, and, maybe Palpatine all along as Darth Plagueis. There's so many ideas. I got a book over there on my shelf here. I'm getting all this stuff together, but Darth Plagueis, and it's not considered canon anymore. And I want to say it's by James Lucerno. I can't see it from here, but anyway, it's a good read. It's become one of my favorite novelizations, books in the timeline, but it's considered legacy, which means basically it's non-canon anymore. It was before the Disney takeover, so it doesn't exist, but I think they're retconning a lot. I think J.J. Abrams is going to bring at least or mention some things, and having the Emperor alive after all this time, there have been some people that are upset about that, because if it's not done right, it undermines, or it could undermine, what was being done, Luke's whole character arc there. And how Vader, threw Emperor Palpatine in Return of the Jedi down that shaft in the Death Star before it blew up. And then, that was essentially his way, by betraying his master, essentially coming back to the light, to the Jedi, and to an extent. And I hope they do it justice. If you're a true fan, you really want to see that. By Palpatine coming back in Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, you're going to want to see that payoff. And I think, if there's any kind of essence or hologram or whatever they're going to freaking do, I don't know. I think it's going to get paid off well. I'm hoping so. Gotta wait several more months. It's we're almost at the end of May, so we got June, July, August, September, October, November, and then December. So we're looking 6-7 months from now, and we'll be talking about it here on the podcast. Obviously, what goes on with the final inclusion or story of the Skywalker clan. Now, interesting enough to tie kind of all this together, talking about Game of Thrones, talking about Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. The writers for Game of Thrones are slated to take over and do a Knights of the Old Republic, which was legacy or used to be canon. Excuse me, and some wonderful video games. I'm all for it. Ryan Johnson, he was supposed to get a trilogy. I don't know if that's still going to happen. And all this was going to take place 1,000 years before all this. And so, that's fine. As long as they don't really mess with too much of the principles of the Force or whatever, I know things can change and they're always in motion. Isn't that what Yoda said? And that's why the future's so hard to tell. But I do sincerely hope that when and if the showrunners for Game of Thrones, when they do Knights of the Old Republic, it was a great video game, and it's a dear place to a lot of Star Wars fans, Knights of the Old Republic. And so I think it'll be very pivotal. It'll be awesome to see what they do with the property there of Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, and if they do a trilogy, which we won't see the first of that until I think 2023 is what we're looking at, which ironically it has nothing to do with it as far as I know, but 2023 is when Avengers Endgame actually took place. I don't know if you know that, but you probably do. So anyway, I was hoping some people would come on the live stream here. It looked like somebody popped in, but they were like, it's too late. Yeah, it's way past my bedtime, but just trying to get a decent setup going here. Forgive the lighting, forgive the whatever, the shadows. I'm sorry about that. I'll get the lighting together. I'll figure it out. But if you're listening to this on the audio podcast, none of that matters, right? So anyway, hopefully we'll do some more of these again, and we'll check out Geek Homeworld. We're on Facebook, obviously, Geek Homeworld, where you can watch the replay and comment on Game of Thrones, Star Wars, whatever you want. We're on Facebook, it's not Game of. We are Geek Homeworld on Facebook. And I'll have this recorded as a new episode of the podcast at geekhomeworld.libsyn.com. So check us out there. Once I kind of get the studio together, I've got boxes everywhere. I'm still trying to figure out what goes where, and I may try some different camera angles and different things, and so I'm working out the bugs, as it were. Hopefully there are no bugs. There are no bugs, I can promise you. I haven't seen any. But you know what I mean. So we'll work out the kinks here, and hopefully do more of these live Facebook chats, maybe more on the YouTube channel. We have a Geek Homeworld YouTube channel, and all the audio podcasts go to that, also to the blog or blogspot or whatever, geekhomeworld.blogspot.com. So you can check them out there too. But I hope to do more of this, and hopefully the video will get better, and we'll look at this a while from now and just laugh. So yeah, you should see I've got every possible lamp I can get. I don't have a proper 3-point lighting, so forgive me for that. So the technicalities aside, I hope that you enjoy, or if you didn't enjoy Game of Thrones, let us know about it, and love to hear your thoughts on it. And I'll be talking some more about that and some other things to come. It's been a month, so I've missed like a lot of stuff that I really wanted to talk about, but I just have not had the opportunity to just sit down and kind of focus on the podcast. You can also check me out on each Saturday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. I do a live radio show. I talk to people in the film industry, and it's been wildly successful, and I'm so excited about that. It's called Savannah on Film, and it's also on Facebook, and we always do the Facebook Lives there, and you can listen on WRUU.org anywhere in the world every Saturday, my time, Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's live. I do the show live, and we'll take your questions on Facebook Live, on the Savannah on Film Facebook Live there, and also Savannah on Film at gmail.com. If you want to send us an email, you got a question, you're interested about being on the show. I'm always interested in talking to people in the industry, so at all different levels. So that's Savannah on Film. Check us out. But you can follow us. We've got Instagram there, and which is Savannah on Film Radio is what the name of the Savannah on Film Instagram account is. We also have Geek Homeworld that I haven't done much with the Instagram there, but I hope to soon. Also, I do have some gameplay on there where I play some of the video games on my phone, like SimCity Build It, Star Trek Timelines. I've done a little bit on that. So I hope to do more of that with the Geek Homeworld channel. So that's on Instagram, but geekhomeworld.libsyn.com is the main website for listening to the audio podcast. They'll also appear on Geek Homeworld on YouTube. Wow, I'm just throwing everything at you. So if it's Geek Homeworld or it's Savannah on Film, you want to check them both out. And I appreciate everybody who's listening, who's interacting, and all that good fun stuff. And it's late. I'm tired. It's time to go to sleep. I'm still hyped up about Game of Thrones. I think it was spectacular. I don't know that they could have done more, but it was very epic, and time will tell how it changes over. How I feel about things. Sometimes I'm like, maybe that wasn't as good as I thought, or maybe I like that better than I liked it. Originally, or I'm sure you're like that. Some things you see and you're just like blown away. And then, later on you're like, okay, it was okay. Because it's easy to get caught up in the hype of it, especially if you're like a fan or a super fan of a franchise or something that you're really passionate about and being geeky about, which is awesome. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this live broadcast on Geek Homeworld here, and the video will be there. I'll make it look a little bit nicer. I don't know what to do about that, but anyway, so just check us out. Thank you for following the podcast. A lot of people have been checking out geekhomeworld.libsyn.com for the audio podcast, so it's out there. Listen to it. I've got a lot of different episodes. I want to say that this particular episode would be and I'm not going to edit it because this was live, and so I don't care. I'm tired. I don't want to edit it, but this will be episode 114 of the Geek Homeworld podcast, and so check us out, geekhomeworld.libsyn.com. Okay, enough yip yapping. Time to go. So thank you very much for listening. I appreciate everybody, and I'm saying goodbye on Facebook. Actually, I'm saying goodbye here first on the podcast. So see you later, and thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Geek Homeworld with your host, SavageTechman. You can find us on Libsyn, Google+. Follow and interact with us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook. Listen to us on iTunes and leave a review. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Read our thoughts on Blogger. See you again on the Geek Homeworld.